Thanks for stopping by. This is Free On Board, a podcast by Tridge. You're in the right place if you're looking to stay up to date with the latest food and agricultural news. Now, on to the updates.
Welcome to episode 8 of Tridge's podcast, where we discuss how the Russian invasion on Ukraine is affecting the grain market. I'm your host, Hae-Sun Jang, a global market analyst at Tridge, and today we'll be talking about how tensions in Russia and Ukraine have led to a surge in the wheat futures market and what we expect will happen in the upcoming months. So joining us today is global market analyst and grain specialist Eugene Tomashevskyi. Welcome to the podcast, Eugene.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining all of us, and there is a lot of going on here on the market.
Yeah, thank you so much for making the decision to join our podcast, Eugene. I know things must be very hectic over there, so thank you for sharing your analysis with us today. So I'll just jump right into the first question. I know there has been some turbulence in the grain market recently. Can you tell us what happened in the grain market during the last couple of weeks?
There have been a lot of going on the global grain market. So wheat futures have experienced severe turbulence over the past 2 weeks. For example, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange wheat May futures have reached $12 per bushel on March 4th at the end of last week, or in other words, it's $444 per metric ton. Whereas last week, prices were fluctuating between 320 and 340 metric tons, which means an increase from $100 to $120 per metric ton. This is the reaction of the global grain market to what is happening right now, with the emphasis on the war between Ukraine and Russia. This is the most powerful political factor that has been supporting the market over the couple of weeks.
And why is this a significant thing that has happened?
Everyone really knows in the world that grain, especially wheat, is a staple commodity. So the jump in global wheat prices is of the highest significance on the agricultural arena because this cereal is the generalization of the world's food security. And any disruption to the supply chain in the central exporting countries would lead to an increase in prices, sparking the ongoing food inflation that has been going on in the world for the past year because of COVID. That is why it is of high importance for us.
I see. Can you explain to the audience how this relates to tensions in Russia and Ukraine?
These tensions which are going on at the moment are of high significance for the global world, and everyone is really watching what is going on. So Ukraine and Russia together possess one of the largest shares of wheat supplies in the world. Both countries account for 29% of global wheat exports. The war conflict in the Black Sea regions means that these grain shipments are distorted, and they're going to be distorted in the short term. It's inevitable. Let's say exports from Ukraine have been suspended since 25th of February, while the shipments from Russia, from the Sea of Azov, the main hub for Russian grain exports, have been paralyzed as well. It means that the supply chain is paralyzed at the moment. This is all happening at the same time when the world is experiencing little supplies, lower supplies than usual, caused by lower harvests in central producers like Canada, United States or Russia. But at the same time, for example, Ukraine received a bumper crop of almost 35 million tons, which is trying to offset the losses in the northern hemisphere. Let's say in January 2021-22, Ukraine exported more than 17 million tons of grain, which corresponds to 70% of its exports potential. But we don't know what's going on with the rest of 30% of all Ukrainian wheat exports that haven't been used so far, which means that, again, this food security in the region might be disrupted.
I think you touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us a bit more about any importers or alternative supplying markets that were affected by these recent events?
So there are two main groups of countries that are being affected by the current conflict. The first is North African countries and, of course, Asian countries. These countries include Egypt, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and many others. For example, on the 26th of February, Egypt announced its wheat tender to buy wheat from Russia and Ukraine, where it usually does, but unfortunately only one offer from a French exporter came, and therefore this tender was cancelled. The same applies to Indonesia, which is responsible for 1/3 of grain imports from Ukraine. So Indonesia last year imported 3 million tons of wheat from Ukraine, and of course it supplies may be jeopardized, as Indonesia will have to switch to other countries like buying from Australia or Argentina and etc.
I see. Did this impact any other product markets?
There's been a tremendous impact on the adjacent market, or let's say corn market. It has also reacted in the same ways as the wheat market. Chicago Mercantile Exchange corn futures touched 10-year high and reached $297 per metric ton last week. So because Ukraine and Russia are also responsible for 90% of total corn exports, of which Ukraine exports account for 17%. So you can imagine the impact that the disruption from the supplies from Ukraine and Russia may cause to the world.
What do you expect will happen in the market?
So there are a few possible scenarios that may develop in the market. So futures and export prices are likely to fluctuate at the near peak levels in the next months, because it's not so easy to offset losses from the supply disruption in the world's biggest grain hub. This is the feature of the grain market, that the wheat market supply is inelastic in the short term. So traders will be closely watching the development of the situation in the Black Sea region. And within the current sowing campaign, some exporting countries could extend the sowing area under the spring wheat, for example, Canada and the United States, to meet the gaps in the global supply. And in addition, high prices for this cereal would help farmers and exporters to get more significant profits. Australia and Argentina may also increase the planting acreage under the cereal given the current circumstances. So all the situation will depend on how the market is reacting to the current war conflict between Ukraine and Russia in the Black Sea region.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us today, Eugene.
Thank you for joining Tridge podcasts, and I hope this information will be beneficial for all of you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe, and share our podcast. Check out tridge.com/intelligence-data for more price analyses and up-to-date insights into the food and agricultural industry.